What if the biggest threat to your home isn't your mortgage, but it's your HOA? Picture this. You buy your house, it's your dream home. You're in Ventura County, nice neighborhood, clean streets. Everything looks great, taken care of, it's safe, it feels smart, it feels like you've made it. And then a few months later, you get a bill for $15,000. You didn't remodel anything, you didn't miss any mortgage payments, and you didn't choose this expense. But now you have to pay it. Or you'll start racking up dues, they'll start fines, and crazy enough, it could get worse from there. That is the HOA trap. And in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how that happens and how to avoid it, and all the downfalls of HOAs. All right, are you ready? Let's get into it. Basically, let's talk about some of the pitfalls of HOAs. Now, I personally really like HOAs because I think it helps a neighborhood hold up to specific standard, right? But there are some caveats to that you need to be aware of, and we're going to talk about how to know exactly what you're getting yourself into in this video. So let's talk about what I alluded to right off the bat, which is that financial trap. So in Ventura County, there's two things that really happen that are going to really affect HOAs in an adverse way. Both of them are related to potential insurance claims or insurance costs. And the biggest thing is either fire abatement or flooding. Now, both of those are things that HOAs have to deal with because they have to have insurance to cover those things. And there's different things that they have to do to abate that. And that can have really large costs. And what they need to do is build up reserves for anything that is brand new. And if they're building up reserves, what they're doing is they're billing you so they can have a reserve amount of money so they can take care of things in the future. It's typically not too bad, but there are crazy scenarios that happen that can get absolutely nuts as far as, a $15,000 payment out of the blue. I recently saw a lady who was billed $224,000. Now, this was in Florida, and there's some reasons why. She was in a big high-rise condo, and they had all kinds of crazy things that they have to do to the building to make sure it doesn't fall down like some of the other ones in Florida that have. But that is exactly the type of thing that's going to create a special assessment that's going to send you a bill right out of the blue. And it's kind of crazy. So that's number one. Now, like I said before, you just need to be aware. There are some downsides to every different piece in real estate, but there are upsides as well. But we just need to be aware so we can make an informed, proper decision from the beginning. So now we've talked about the HOA and special assessments. Let's go into the next one is when all of a sudden you feel like your neighbor is your landlord. I happen to live in an HOA here in Moore Park. And what is interesting about that is they have on the website, they have a little notification. You can go in there and say, hey, I walked by this house and saw this. And so any of us can quote unquote tell on any of us at any time. Now, it has not been bad, but we did get a notification right after moving in that we needed to take care of all of our landscaping. It's one of those things that when we moved in, we had a renter prior and, but there's landscaping issues that needed to be taken care of. So we got that taken care of. But before we actually did, because we had so many other things going on when we first moved in, we did get a notification from the HOA, like, hey, you need to take care of this. We got it done in the timeline and everything. But what that means is I know that my neighbors and whatnot can basically drive by, and if they see something that doesn't fit in the HOA guidelines, they could tattle on us at any point in time. And so sometimes it feels like you have to, kowtow to your neighbors before you actually have your own home in order. The other thing with your neighbor's involvement, anything that fits into certain parameters, you might not even be able to build on your property. So like one of the things that we are actually doing is we're building a gazebo in our backyard, and it's going to be, the limit is 8 feet. This gazebo design is actually 8 feet and 7 inches. So because of that, I have to get permission from my neighbors to build that gazebo. Now, is it a bad thing? Not necessarily. I know both of my neighbors. It's not really that big of a deal. We haven't sent them the plans yet, but I just don't think it'll be that big of a deal in the long run. But can it be if you've got a real annoying neighbor or somebody who moves in and all of a sudden is really annoying? So just know that that can happen, right? Okay. So now we've got that. And it's when things stop getting annoying and start becoming threats. So let's say we're doing our little transition and they don't like something that's in the front yard, and we get a notification that we didn't pay something on time. Well, for instance, like I said, we had a tenant. We never got notifications from any of the notifications from the HOA. There was a bill that we got that we did not pay until we moved in because we never got notifications from our tenant that was here. That ended up costing us more money than if we just would have paid it right off the front. Now, what is crazy about that is if the HOA, like most, want to, they can literally foreclose on your property because they have a lot of those guidelines in their documentation. Now, you would know this if when you bought the property, you read the CC&Rs, and that's the covenants and restrictions and the other word that just literally escaped me as I was saying it. And so you just need to know that that is a possibility, that that kind of thing can happen. It's one of those things that, is not typically going to happen unless you run into a managing board of your HOA that starts to get a little power hungry. And then all of a sudden you're fighting with an HOA that is becoming power hungry and they're like, and you want to, obviously, just like with everything in life, you want to stay on everybody's good side. Doesn't mean you have to be a doormat, but you do have to make sure you're trying to get along with people to make sure that those things happen. So that's when a regular old little thing can turn into a threat. Nobody wants to get threatened with foreclosure when they're paying their mortgage and they're in a house that they love and all those other things, just because they missed, paying even a minor special assessment, or they get a fine because they didn't cut their shrubbery, right? So, all right. And then the last of this video's little hidden costs is typically HOAs, let's say the market goes up 10%, HOA neighborhoods tend to lag in that rise in value. And why is that? Well, HOA fees can be anywhere from, let's say, $150 to all the way up to $1,000 a month. That amount cuts into the amount that you can actually pay on your mortgage. It counts as part of your loan to value ratio or your debt to value ratio when you're buying a home. So that means that there's a lot of people who cannot necessarily buy in a more expensive HOA scenario, so they just don't go there. So you're just getting a lot less people who are coming through that want to deal with that. And so if you can find one that has a little small HOA fee, it's not bad because it's not going to affect those ratios too immensely. But there are scenarios where you'll see them where there's $600, $700 and it gets worse and worse, right? So what are we doing with that? Well, we're just knowing that if we buy in a HOA neighborhood, that we're not going to get that equity boost at the same rate as somebody who's not in an HOA neighborhood. It does. Now, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, meaning that your neighborhood might actually look better than some of those. I've lived in properties that didn't have HOAs. I lived in one that somebody left their son who got out of jail, the property when they passed away, they moved into it, and our next door neighbor all of a sudden was working on broken cars and the whole leaving cars in their yard and the whole 9 yards. Eventually we got that all taken care of, but if we had an HOA, would have been taken care of a lot quicker. So anyway, just watch out for those. And let's talk about how to protect yourself if you are looking at a property that you want to buy that has HOAs. You really just need to make sure that you read all the documents that you are given. You need to read the CC&Rs. And you need to review the financials of the HOA itself. See if there's any special assessments coming up that you might want to know about ahead of time and you can plan for. Read the last 4 to 6 meetings notes. Typically, they have a monthly meeting and they'll have minutes. So you want to read those minutes and so you understand everything that's kind of going on and get a snapshot of where the HOA is as far as their financial stability, because you do run into scenarios where HOAs have not managed themselves very well and all of a sudden they go bankrupt and all those things, and it creates a nightmare for those people who are living underneath that HOA, right, in that neighborhood. So in closing, it's pretty simple. You can buy in a neighborhood that has an HOA, but you just need to understand your risks and what you're getting into. Do everything you can to plan ahead of time and know that there's some upsides and some downsides, and maybe even see if you can't sit in on some minutes or on one of the meetings so you kind of get an idea of exactly where things are at. Some HOAs don't like that. Some HOAs are just fine with that because they're nice and open, which is always a good sign. So if you need any more tips or tricks, please go ahead and subscribe. Give me a comment. Let me know if you have any other crazy scenarios that you dealt with HOAs, or why you love HOAs and I'm just on crack here. So let me know, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.